Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me in today's Product School webinar on 3 must-have skills to be a cloud product manager. I am Devika Nair, and I'm Director of Product at Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Before I go into more detail into the topic or myself, I just wanted to set some expectations so you know what you're going to be hearing over the next 30 minutes. I've heard a lot of people who are interested in transitioning into being a product manager in a cloud service. And I have been in this area for a while now, and I thought that it would be beneficial for someone who's looking to make this transition or anyone who is relatively new in cloud computing area to understand what are the top skills and traits to expect in a product manager in a cloud service. So I will go through some of the common traits among successful cloud PMs and also touch upon the must-have skills from my point of view. And in addition to people who want to be a product manager in the cloud, there's also a lot of demand from pretty much every large cloud computing company to hire more product managers who can run their business and continue to drive it. And as this demand grows, I wanted to make sure that I could share some tips on whether that might be the right career move for you as well. So who am I? Let's just go a little bit into myself. I'm a computer engineer at heart, and that's what I studied professionally, did my computer engineering bachelor's and master's, and I used to work as a developer. And at some point, I figured that I enjoyed figuring out the why and what more than the how to build something. And that is when I decided to transition into being a product manager. And I loved understanding what my customers want and building solutions to help them and growing that business. And I used to be a product manager for analytics applications and working on automating machine learning models. From there, I transitioned into cloud more than 5 years ago when I joined AWS. And I used to be a principal product manager at AWS in various different services. I spent some time there. And then earlier this year, I joined Oracle Cloud to run their product teams for serverless and containers. And that's where I am right now. And I've always been passionate about both mentoring and hiring product managers, actually in general too. And I've included my LinkedIn in case anybody wants to reach out to me. I shall also include that at the end so that you have it. You have my contact information. And I've done a lot of hiring, both for my roles as well as for most of my time at Amazon as a bar raiser. I used to hire for various different teams. So I've interacted with and hired a whole bunch of cloud product managers at these 2 different companies. And I wanted to share some of my observations and tips so that it might help you. And the picture, I live in the Pacific Northwest, and like most people in the area, love getting outdoors whenever I get a chance. And click next. So, like most PMs, what I've done to tell you what I think is a cloud product manager is break it down into problems that we can solve. So, the cloud and the product manager. So, first, let's talk about cloud and what I mean by that. So, when I'm talking about cloud product manager, I mean about typical cloud computing. So, the infrastructure, platform, or software as a service, on-demand availability of these resources without having your own data center or your own management, like we see at a lot of large enterprises. It is less applicable what I talk when it relates to cloud platforms or the products like Netflix or Spotify that are also delivered and built on clouds. When I come to the differences in the why, you will see why I'm trying to make this classification. The second, the product manager. I mean, you're all at product school. You have probably heard from a lot of different experts. are experts yourself and know what product management means. So we as product managers, we do everything from understanding the customers, launching the products, coming up with a plan, coming up with a business strategy, launching and growing the products. We are great collaborators, we respond, we are trying to understand, we are team players. I mean, in short, we are responsible for the success and development of products. So what's a cloud product manager? There's somebody who is doing this in an IaaS, PaaS, or SaaS service. That is my definition, or at least that's the one I'm going to use for the purpose of today's conversation. So, how or why is a cloud product manager different? When at least most of the literature that I found, when you look at being a product manager, transitioning into being a product manager, whether it's about the interview books or topics or classes, they typically talk about selling your product to consumers. I mean, there are different customer segments you're talking about, but in general, most of them are about building products that are usable by a large segment of customer personas or a target market, and how you can build something that all of these people can use. Whereas cloud product management is typically a business to business product and sale, and your customers are typically enterprises. I mean, I'm using that as a term not just to mean large enterprises, but small, medium businesses, startups, ISVs, all the whole segment of it. But really, your user is a business. So that's the first one. And there are some differences when you are talking about who your customer is. B2B product management typically has more direct interactions. You're talking to the customer or really multiple people at the customer end, trying to understand their needs. They typically have more opinionated and well-formed thoughts on what they want, and they're looking for things that fit into their ecosystem, as opposed to when you are using something like when you're trying to buy a product like an app on your phone, and it's really about, hey, I want a fitness tracking app, which one suits me, and I'm looking for one. The second is most cloud services are operating at a very high growth, fast paced environment, which means that your environment is changing, your ecosystem around you is changing at a faster pace than you can keep up. So this is really for people who want to run, who want to jump quickly. And that fast paced nature is also another difference that I find among cloud product managers. They thrive in that change. They thrive in embracing those changes and continuing to evolve. Now, a little bit because of the high growth environment and also because the changing environments, the roadmap flexibility is another piece that I find. It is very rare, or I would be surprised to find some of it. Where you have already come up with your 5-year plan or your 3-year plan, and you can stick to that roadmap. As opposed to, let's say you're developing a game and you know what you want to do over the next few years, which features come first. There might be a little bit of changing the ordering based on observing the feedback and usage and things like that. But here you're probably talking about more drastic changes in the entire direction you want to take your product. That roadmap flexibility is another thing that I find very different in cloud product management. The next is that unlike the old world when you're selling licenses or it's a physical device that you're selling or any other kind of such sales, most cloud products offer a pay-as-you-go model. This means your customers typically have no lock-in. There are exceptions, but let's assume for the most part, your customers are not locked in. And what this means is it's a reminder to the product managers to continue keeping the customers happy. You want to do it regardless, but this just becomes even more important because you don't have an existing customer base who are going to stick with you forever unless they're happy with your product. And you want to ensure that you're solving the right problems and creating products that the customers love. And last but not the least, and a little bit because they are enterprises or B2B, your customers are typically technical. The users of an infrastructure as a service is looking to deploy their infrastructure, or when it's a platform. Even most SaaS customers are technical customers who are looking at integrating with your products or using your products within their ecosystem in a multitude of ways. So these are some of the differences that I've observed, or I want to focus on for the rest of the talk on how cloud product management is different. So what I did is I took a look at what companies are looking for. So like most of us, when we want an answer to something, went on Google, typed for cloud product management jobs. And this is what I found most people looking for: creating product roadmaps, driving vision, defining go-to-market, working cross-functionally, being able to launch and iterate. What I felt is, while it covers some things like you have to work with technical customers, you need to be able to adapt, you need to work with customers, being in a high growth environment, it doesn't necessarily talk about every thing that is an expectation for someone who's come in. This is also probably why you do see a lot of PMs who move fields, or let's say go back into being a product manager in a different domain. I know a lot of people I've worked with who, after working for a while on AWS, for example, love the company as such, but that's not necessarily what they want, and would move to a place like Alexa or retail where they probably find it closer to what they like. So while I am considering what I found and what I've seen and what I myself write when we're talking about the job descriptions, I do want to focus a little bit more into the skill set that you need as you're building and operating. So I think I already spoke about this a little bit. So when I'm talking about the skill set, there's two parts that I want to focus on. One is as you're building, when you're talking about launching the product or the feature. And the second is as you continue to operate it. Now, we all like and we all want to focus on, and we all think when we're talking about product management, the focus on the launching, but that's only a beginning. So, and operating is a key and more important part, because you're going to live with it longer, iterating over your products as opposed to that initial launch. So the first step on launching. So what is the product manager doing at the time of launch? First off, they're looking at, hey, what is it that I want to build? What is the product? Who is the customer? What do they want? What do they want to solve? Why do they want something? And you use that to come up with your vision. You build that high level idea, and then you look at how does it work? How will the customers interact? Typically, it's not one mechanism. You may have customers who are going on the console, clicking through every button, but in a lot of cases for cloud products, you're talking about customers using the APIs. In some cases, just using the bots. I've also had to work on products where a lot of my consumption, especially when I was in management and governance products, is maybe even through reports and emails. And you want to think through the entire ecosystem as to how that product works. The second is also you want to look at where in the customer's life cycle your product fits in. How does it integrate with their ecosystem? If it's about their supply chain process, where does it fit in? Does it integrate well? Does it sit well? That's also really part of how it works. I mean, there is the part of how it works, which is about how my systems scale. Like when I'm talking about a serverless product, we are talking about how it works. Where do I deploy the customer's workloads? That's one part of it, but how the customer interacts with it is just as important. Then you're also looking at the product validation. What are the alternate? What are the current processes? What else is out there, whether at your competitors or not? And once you have this idea, the right solution, as you think of it, you're looking at, is it the right thing? You have the vision, you have an initial version of it, you've defined the product requirements, the go-to-market strategy, all of it, but you're doing a lot of research to back it up. You're talking to customers, you're looking at proxy pieces of data. I mean, because you don't have the product itself. You're looking at a lot of ways to validate that what you've thought about is right. But really, if I were to just talk about two parts about the launching piece, it is talking to customers and not waiting forever. Talking to customers in order to know most of the answers to what we spoke about. What is the product, how it works, where it fits in, am I building the right thing, validating it, understanding what they're looking for so that you frame the right go to market strategies, acting as that champion or a champion of customer back into your enterprise, the whole lot of it. I'm not going to I'm not going to talk about or cover topics that are just general product management. I assume most of you know what product management is about. But really, here, the focus I was talking about is you interact directly with customers to understand all of those pieces that you want in your product life. And the second part about launching is you want to be quick. You want to be out there. You want to be able to be out there to get feedback, but you also want to be out there so that your customers start building on top of you. And because of that, you don't want to wait for the perfect. You want to launch as quickly and then iterate over it. So you talk to customers, you don't wait for the perfect product, and you launch. And your product's out there. So clearly, a lot of your time as a PM is on operating the product. We spoke about we spoke about having to prioritize, to create, but one part of it now that your product's out there, is identifying the patterns. These patterns could come from anywhere. It could be really, how are my customers using? Which customers are not using my product? What else are they asking for? And you use that again as a feedback loop for your prioritization. You're constantly iterating on what you're building. And sometimes you're taking a completely different direction. Say, for example, you find that customers are having operational issues as they use your product. Remember, we're talking about cloud services. So typically customers are using that to build. Maybe you're talking about a storage. Customers are putting their data in there. And as part of it, maybe they are looking at having more backups or having resiliency. You're looking at what are the things your customers are asking and iterate, but you're also looking at what are the other pain points. You find the tickets, and sometimes these are also helping you identify new needs. There might be operational issues you want to productize. It may be a configuration that you want to launch or a new way of customers to interact with your product. So we spoke about identifying the patterns, iterating on it, and through all of it, you're adapting to these changes. Your vision, like we spoke about earlier, your 5-year vision is not going to stay constant. And while that's the case in a lot of products, in cloud, it is more so. So that's one part of it, the how you are looking at things changing and adapting. The second is also, because of the fact that there is a lot to do, you're not going to build everything yourself either. So in addition to leveraging your network, like every PM's doing in order to influence the engineering teams, then partner with cross-functionally, you're also looking at what other products are out there. Maybe what your customers want could be solved better with an additional feature on the identity side, or maybe you just don't need any new product. You're talking about bringing these two together and writing how the customers can make these two things work together. So there's a lot of different ways. So it's about leveraging your network to build these solutions that the customers are looking for. And as things are changing, as you're looking at solutions, keeping everyone informed, whether it is your end customers through your messaging, or whether it is your own leadership chain when you're talking about what you're building. And last but not the least, though your vision may change, what you're trying to do your success criteria rarely does. You want to be sure you're looking at what is success for me. Is it in order to drive more usage? Is it in order to change the customer sentiment? You want to make usability much better, or you want to just ensure there is lower churn, and you want to have success criteria like having customers who promote your product, having low churn rate, having more usage of features that you're looking to build, and all of it. So, summarizing what we were talking about in the last few minutes, we were talking about two parts, the launching and the operating. You want to launch quickly based on what you know and what you've heard from your customers. And you want to continue listening to the customers, looking at patterns, looking at what to do, looking at the environment around it, and constantly iterate, adapt to the changes, and find solutions that help people, keep everyone up to date, and go from there. Now, we spoke about a lot of different things, but I think this really boils down to these three must have. And this is what I meant by the must have solutions, the must have skills for a product manager in the cloud. First is observation. We spoke a lot about launching quickly, talking to customers, watching out for what else is out there, the understanding the ecosystem, all of it. So what you want to really do is you're putting your customers at the center of your decisions, but you want to look at the problem from all angles. Having a narrow view of, hey, is my product solving the customer problem, could really be detrimental because most cloud services fit in. There might be some software as a service that is used in isolation, but very rarely so. And your product is going to fit into a larger ecosystem for the customer. And you want to make sure that the problems are solved at the right places and you are solving the right problems. So you want to look at whatever problem you hear from different angles. You want to put the customer at the center of the decision, but look at what is the right solution as opposed to what is the right feature in my product. So that's the first. And also, data is only a portion. We spoke earlier as well. So you want to talk to customers. So the first must have that I call is the observation. Both keeping your eye open in terms of patterns and data and listening to customers, but also to look at the problems holistically and not in isolation. We spoke about earlier, like when it's a operational issue, or let's say operational issue, but really what you want is some configuration because there are two ways in which customers are using your product. Or maybe there are trends, maybe more customers are using your product, your platform or infrastructure as part of the DevOps pipeline. You don't have the right automation. You want to really look at it in general, and PMs in the cloud need to be more aware of where they sit. That is my first. The next is prioritization. I must have used this word multiple times through the last few slides, but you want to identify what your customers want, what your customers love. You want to understand the why so that you're solving the right problems. So by observing and prioritizing right, you're already going to be doing a great job. So, and then to the horizontal across these two, if you want to call it, or what you want throughout, is also that technical expertise. And by that, I don't necessarily mean you're the best coder out there, that you can write the most efficient code. That's not what a product manager necessarily needs to have. But it's about having the necessary technical expertise to know how your products are being used. You want to consider that your products are scalable, highly available, reliability. So you want to consider these non-functional requirements. At the same time, you want to understand the trends in the market. You want to understand the end-to-end experience of how people are using. The cloud product managers are technologists at heart more than they are business product managers or generalist product managers. So these are my version of three must-haves. I think cloud product managers are highly observant, they are constantly prioritizing, and they have the technical expertise to be able to do these first two. And once you can do this, I think you've met the 80-20 rule. So you have the 20% in order to do most of the tasks at cloud. This again varies because technical expertise is too generic a term. And depending on the cloud service you're talking about, your expertise needs may vary. But in general, once you have these three, you can be more successful at more successful at executing your product. You may also notice I didn't include anything more generic like leveraging a network, being good communicators, using being data driven, and all of it, because I think that's just skill sets that every product manager already must have. And as a bonus, I also wanted to include three must have soft skills, which I think is really around being curious, having empathy, having the passion, and good communication skills. So, in addition to being observant and being able to prioritize and having the right tech skills, you need to have these skills in yourself. Unless you are passionate about the product, unless you're passionate about solving the customer problem, ensuring that you're looking at the right problem and solving it, it is going to be hard for you to be. It's going to be hard for you to take your products forward. So curiosity to understand what is going on, to know what is happening, empathy to understand the right user experience, figure out how your customers are going to be using it. These help you in your observation portion. That passion is going to help you drive your observation and prioritization. And then communication. I have a pen there because I feel that while you do need to communicate at all levels, there's a lot of verbal communication, a lot of partnership, building networks, and all of it. A lot of what you need to do is also convey your vision or convey your plans in writing. So your must-haves with being observant, prioritizing, and technical expertise, and the soft skills of curiosity, empathy, passion, and communication. With all of this together, I think you would be a successful product manager in cloud services. Oh, that was a lot. So now, how can you be a cloud product manager? It really depends on where you are. Where are you talking about transitioning from? The easiest transition is if you're already a product manager, and specifically if you're already a product manager in an enterprise product or something that's sold to enterprises. But that is not where most cloud product managers come from. They're coming from all over the place. They could be B2C PMs or in other roles, and especially junior PMs coming from other roles like operations, engineering, business, developer advocates, consulting, could be from pretty much all over the place, UX, all of it. But what I would say is first step to knowing how you can be a cloud product manager is ask yourself what excites you about it and why you want to be one. Once you know that and you're sure you want to be a cloud product manager, and maybe you also define that area where you want to be. Maybe you're just passionate about storage and you want to be a storage product manager, or maybe it's about compute, or it could be about a particular type of software. Then it helps you to identify the gaps. For example, if you are currently a developer working for a game development company, might be harder for you to make a transition into being a cloud product manager. That is when it might be easier for you to first transition to being a developer in one of the cloud industries to reduce that gap. So, first identifying the gap helps. Maybe you want to also reduce the gap if it is necessary. And then you want to pick the domain closest to your skill set. So if you are a product manager already, it might be easier for you. There's a little less learning. Or let's say if you are in operations, or you're working on data center operations, might be easier for you to transition to being in an infrastructure domain. So you want to pick the closest domain to your existing skill set to make that transition easier. So you know you want to be a product manager, you've identified your gaps, you pick that domain, and that's when you start applying for the jobs. Maybe you get some calls, you want to use your network, the typical way you'd apply for jobs and networking. And I think there are plenty of ways and plenty of people who are experts in that area who have spoken about these things. So you identify from among the thousands of cloud PM positions out there, which are the ones that you want to target. And once you have the chance to interview, you really want to prove to the interviewers, you want to prove to the panels that you have one skill set to learn, or you have a smaller gap than they would perceive. Because if somebody sees that you have to learn product management and the domain and how to work with their culture, it's going to be a harder sell as to why to hire you. So you want to prove to people that there's a smaller gap that you have. And last but not the least is within your area or your domain that you've picked, you want to constantly stay up to date. If you are talking about becoming a Kubernetes product manager, what else is out there? What are the other solutions? What are the latest ways in which customers are deploying their Kubernetes applications? What is it that Amazon's offering right now? Or what is it that the open source world is offering? You want to keep yourself constantly up to date. So this is my 5 steps to getting a job. For example, if I were to go personally, from being an analytics PM, when I transitioned first, I moved into the management and governance, specifically into the cloud cost management at AWS. Was an easier transition for me. Lesser domain learning. I know who is using it, who my customers are. That's the kind that I'm used to. And from there, I transitioned to different teams. But at that point of time, I am only learning the domain. I'm not learning how to be a PM. And similarly, when I transitioned to Oracle, I changed domains. While I empathize with my developers who are my customers, the developers who are looking to modernize their applications or build new applications, while I have the curiosity to understand how they build it, the empathy to do it, the passion to solve that problem. It's a new domain for me, which I felt I could learn. So I only had to talk about how I have to learn that domain, but hey, here's the set of skill set that I'm going to bring along with both my technical expertise across other areas, as well as my skill set in terms of observing and prioritizing and being an effective PM. So just to go a little bit over what we learned today. So first we learned about cloud computing or cloud services being a fast-paced, evolving product management job. And flexibility and ruthless prioritization are the key there. It's not a sell once, you are continuing to keep the customers happy, keeping them in mind, identifying what to build. You want to launch quickly and iterate. The launch is only your beginning. You want to be curious, have empathy, and be passionate. And while you are looking to become a cloud product manager, we've talked about the skill set like being curious and empathetic and observing prioritization and technical expertise, the 3 things that I call the top skills. You want to identify where your gaps are, where you're closest, and try to get into a product job related to that. So thank you for listening to me, and I hope this has helped you. If you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn directly. And remember, as I mentioned earlier, these are my views, my opinions from the last 5+ years of being a product manager in the cloud. And I think that most people I have noticed who are highly observant, constantly prioritize, and have the right technical expertise end up being successful product managers in the cloud. And thank you again for joining me, and have a good rest of your day.